Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Propagandacast with me, Imperial Dane. This match will be on Industrial Riverbed with me playing as the British versus Harat as the Wehrmacht. A few things to note about this map is it's a bit different from some of the ones I've shown you so far, having a lot of rivers, a lot of, inroads, not any places where you can really set up a front. For example, the central victory point being on a small island with approaches from pretty much everywhere. And so it's sort of a map where you're going to have a harder time setting up any proper defensive positions for some players. Now, I should also note I'm probably not the greatest British player, and it's been some time since I last played though. Anyhow, let's go. Starting out with my recon section, sending it out. And I start out with training a lieutenant, since I figure I might as well get him out on the field so he can capture some territory, and then an infantry section to follow up, thus getting something out fast that can capture territory at a decent speed, and have an infantry section afterwards that can then move at decent speed, since unless under the supervision of an officer they tend to act rather reluctantly and move at a slow pace, unless of course they're equipped for reconnaissance. My opponent going with a free pioneer start, having a delayed build for his Wehrmacht quarters, which I'd normally not do, but you know, to each his own, starting out with seizing the fuel point, whereas I have started out with the munitions point, figuring I'd rather be able to quickly improve my infantry sections with some better weaponry. Not going for the strategic point over here, but instead also opting for the medium munitions point, and then following up with pioneers to take that point. We'll see what his first unit out will be, and currently moving a slow start on both sides, in particular since as the British you won't really have a lot of starting units, meaning you'll generally not be able to capture so much until you've gotten some troops out on the field. So, moving out my recon section across the river. So far no resistance, and my opponent has a Volksgrenadier team out on the field, skulking around near the Wehrmacht quarters and not really keen on moving out, it seems, or my opponent may just have forgotten about it. And he does seem to have a lot of units idle for some reason. Perhaps he's AFK. I'll assume that, since that can happen for whatever reasons. My infantry section having moved up and are now under the supervision of the lieutenant, moving ahead to capture the northern areas, and I'm gearing up for a third infantry section. At the same time, I'm securing this strategic point, which also controls access to this high fuel point, and in fact I'm also getting the access to the northern high fuel point. Moving my infantry section in, finding the pioneers unawares, and seems like my opponent has woken up again, trying to move his pioneers into safety, garrisoning them while the other team is moving ahead for the central island. Moving my infantry section to take the munitions point from my opponent, and another unit from the Wehrmacht quarters, but he's still not moving. Oh, there it goes. The Volksgrenadier is on the move. Although not to meet my recon section head on, for some reason or the other. Third infantry section on the way, so I'll be on a rather infantry heavy start. Some may opt to go for a Bren carrier, and some opt to go for some emplacement somewhere. I prefer to have at least 3 infantry sections, as that's rather falls under my rule of thumb of at least having 3 infantry teams on the field at any time, as a minimum. Encountering the first MG team from my opponent and quickly dealing with it, since he set it up poorly and did not really have anything to actually support it. The MG team paying the price of his commander's recklessness. No survivors. Not even wounded. Oh wait, there seems to be one wounded there. And the Volksgrenadiers instead trying to harass my fuel income, and The pioneers in the north doing the same, but finding themselves under fire from my infantry section, barely making it out alive. My recon section finding itself trapped by another Volksgrenadier team, and will have to get out of there before they're lost, since 3 men against 5 are not going to be a pretty sight. A quick parting shot at the Volksgrenadiers before they retreat, while this infantry team is taking on the Volksgrenadiers, and not really doing well, probably because they're unsupervised and so they won't always do so well. And I'm calling in a infantry support truck. It's a field support truck, I can't exactly remember at the moment. And we have the central victory point being captured by the pioneers, and the Harat sending his troops to secure the southern part of the map, while my first infantry section is moving down to secure this fuel point, and my other infantry sections, which have so far been mauled, are resupplying and regrouping. Moving in the infantry's field support truck and sending it up at the fuel point, munitions point. Good heavens, right there. And a small lull so far while I regroup, and while my opponent begins taking upwards and goes for the Kampfkraft center, probably intent on gaining some veterancy for his Volksgrenadiers. And my recon section moving out, me noticing that the pioneers are trying to cut me off from my northern territories, so moving up this infantry section to deal with the interlopers and equipping them with rifle grenades. An upgrade I find particularly useful, since it's basically firing off grenades that can deal with garrisoned units out on the field, and can also provide smoke cover if necessary. So quite handy in my opinion. Taking on the pioneers, who retreat without suffering any major casualties. Moving in to secure once more my lost territory here, spotting the mines, as recon sections are actually capable of that, so that's a good reminder for any of you newcomers. And trying to take out the mines, because while they can spot them, they can't really deal with them without having to shoot them. Having moved a bit too far, I'm forced to again move them closer so I can deal with the mines. And a Volksgrenadier team has taken cover in the house overlooking the entrance to this, area, I suppose. Not sure what else I'd call it. In recon section moving up to flank it, and on the side with the fewer windows, while another section takes up the front and so can keep the pressure on from all sides. Getting in a captain from my support truck and sappers next. So far I have yet to secure any victory points, as I've been a bit more focused on trying to secure territory and fighting the enemy. Which means I am a small victory point loss, while my opponent has suffered nothing in that regard. A second Volksgrenadier team is moving in, along with the MG42, probably going to seek cover in that building, and the rifle grenades move in, hoping to blast them out, but arriving a bit too late, although causing some casualties amongst the Volksgrenadiers inside the building, but getting suppressed by infantry section down at the trees, still providing fire support. The rifle grenadiers pulling back, the infantry recon section also suffering heavy losses, is forced to pull back before it's getting slaughtered, while this still keeps the rest of the Wehrmacht troops back before themselves pulling out. Stuart light tank on the way, and my sappers moving out. My captain having hit a mine and is now in the process of securing the middle munitions point. The Wehrmacht player is securing what was lost once more.
The area is secure. I don't see any signs of Jerry.
Already one veterancy level out for the Volksgrenadiers, meaning they'll be able to heal themselves a bit. And a Krieg barracks has gone off from Harat, to support his troops and hopefully provide some backbone for his troops, who are so far consisting of support units and light infantry. Not really going to cut it against the British infantry sections in the long run. So, once more moving in to cause some damage to the Volksgrenadiers and keep the fight over here and over in the enemy's half of the map, since there's usually to one's advantage. Stuart light tank moving in to support. Sappers securing the central VP. Pioneers finding themselves gunned down by infantry sections with Bren guns and rifle grenades now. And one should note that the Bren gun upgrade is usually a good thing, although one shouldn't go over the top with it, as they can't really deal well with garrison units, but otherwise any units out in the open will quickly come to regret being out in the open. Volksgrenadier team moving in, trying to oust my sappers from the central victory point, but finding themselves under fire from a light tank, realizing they can't do such feats of heroism as knock one out, quickly pulling back, not even trying to fire off a Panzerfaust. And my captain hanging back at the central headquarters command truck, and some might be wondering why I haven't moved it out, and that's because I feel the streets are too narrow, meaning it's going to be moving a bit slower, plus I'm not entirely comfortable with always moving out trying to secure some advanced point, and sometimes I just prefer to have it here so I have some sort of far back fallback point in case of something really bad happening. And here we have my opponent already gathering up numerous grenadiers, with what we are having to look at the beginnings of a blob already now at red 2, meaning these grenadiers will be harder for small weapons, small arms fire to damage. And machine gun team moving up, and here we are having some pioneers and Volksgrenadiers relaxing a bit, having a bit of a rest, laying down barbed wire to try and seal off the central bridge, making things a bit harder, and my field support truck coming under Panzerschreck fire, and me being foolish and not moving it in time, and so it comes under heavy Panzerschreck fire from grenadiers, moving the infantry section into the nearby building so they can open fire with the Bren guns from relative safety, finally packing up the field support truck, but to no avail. It's getting heavily damaged and blown up. A terrible loss, and really is my own fault. I should have been able to move that faster, but I had forgotten all about it and reacted too slowly. Stuart moving in to try and cut off the retreating troops and causing no casualties. Reconnecting the top fuel point and floating a lot of manpower, really. It's something you really shouldn't be doing, honestly, but I suspect I was focusing too much on controlling the troops under my command, since I am a bit, again, rusty with the British. So, my fault, and really, if anyone. And if you do feel like pointing out that I'm probably not the